So before I explain how to add your routers, let me first explain a few fundamentals of networking. So in networking, we have networks, and a network is a collection of interconnected devices that can communicate with one another. Like your ISP router is connected to your MikroTik, is connected to the internet. So devices on the same network can talk to each other directly. So this, for example, here we have these different APs and the PPOE client. They are connected to this MikroTik, and on the MikroTik, let's say the MikroTik PPOE clients have this subnet of IP addresses. So the MikroTik is the entire controller of the network, and all these devices, the PPOE client and the APs, are considered to be on the same network, so they can just communicate directly. So devices on different networks must send their data through a router to find the correct path. Now, under networks, we have subnets. A subnet is like a neighborhood. Now, it is a logical and visible subdivision of an IP network. Now, if a network is a massive city, a subnet is a specific neighborhood within that city. Now, for example, here in this MikroTik, we have multiple IP subnets. So in this case, our MikroTik is like our city, and now within that city we have our hotspot clients that are and PPOE clients are on this subnet of 172.17.0.1/16, and now also have our router networks, and now our router network sits on this subnet of 10.71.0.1. So those are their different neighborhoods. These two cannot link with each other unless they communicate through the MikroTik. So now, for example, here in networks, we have this subnet 10.0.0.1/16. It is a /16 sized subnet, so meaning it can have a maximum of 65,025 IP addresses. You just multiply these two last sets of numbers to get this value, because in a network each set can only have a maximum of 255. So in a /16 subnet, only the last rightmost sets of numbers can change. Now here you can only change these two sets of numbers, this one and this one, when you are giving out your IPs, or when the DHCP server is giving out IP addresses in this type of subnet. Now, examples of IPs we can have in this subnet: we can have 10.0.0.2 or 10.0.2.10. As you can see, only the last two are changing. These the first two sets are not changing. Also, we can have a /24. Now this one, /24, simply signifies that only the first set of numbers is changing, the last one, and it can only have a maximum of 255 IP addresses. Now, an example, you can have 10.0.0.2, 10.0.0.3, or we can also have the 192, which is most common on routers, 168.0.3 or .5, or we can have .100.5, then .100.7. Yet only the last digit is changing only. Okay. And under subnets, we go to the IP addresses. Now, an IP address is like a unique identifier. It is your address in that neighborhood. So it is assigned to every single device connected to a network, whether it is your phone, a server, or a smart bulb. In the widely used IPv4 standard, an IP addresses looks like phone numbers separated by periods, as you can see, and it is always split in two distinct parts. The network ID, it explains which network the device belongs to, like the city or the street, and the host ID identifies the specific device on that network, like the house number. So here, the network ID in our subnets here, in a /24 subnet, our network ID would be these first three sets of numbers, and the last one is the reserved one for your individual IP address. In a /16 subnet, the last two are our network ID, and the first two are where we can get our IP addresses from. Okay, so when setting up our APs, now in Tickman, when setting up our APs, we need to assign each one a unique IP address so that the MikroTik can separate it from the rest to avoid confusion. Now, in MikroTik, we can have for those that are using Tickman, we have a hotspot network, and it's usually 172.17.0/16. And in this network, we can have our PPOE clients or the hotspot clients. This is the network they are using to get their IP addresses. And in our router network, now in our router network, this is where you are going to assign your IP addresses. Now, for the router network, we recommend that you use the network 10.71.0.1/16 for your subnet when you're assigning IP addresses to your APs. Now from here, when you are registering your AP1, you give it as an IP of 10.71.0.1. You don't give it this IP. You don't give it the first IP in the subnet .1. You don't give it this, as this one is reserved for the MikroTik, and it is automatically assigned by the system when you're adding your MikroTik, when you're adding your router. So you can add this as your AP1, and then your AP2, you can give it an IP of 10.71.0.3 in the DHCP server settings, as I'm going to show you later. And for PPOE clients, or those access points that are able to get their IP addresses automatically, especially outdoor access points, for them you find their IP addresses in the network settings. So for them, you don't need to assign an IP address, as it is automatically assigned. So what you'll need to do is to just check in the hotspot or PPOE or DHCP server settings to get their IP addresses by searching for their MAC address that is on the router, and then you can register that AP as and enable monitoring. So essentially, when you are assigning quick tip, you just basically just increment the last digit by 1 when you are assigning. Increment the last digit by 1 so that each AP has its own unique IP address. So if the first one you given it a 2, just increment by 1. The next one you give it a 3, and then the next one you can give it, like, you add 1 to the last digit, so you give it a 10.71.0.4, and so on and so forth. Now for some routers, you are going to find a situation whereby it requests you to add a start and end IP address. Now for this case, just get this same IP address that you assigned to your router, copy it, and in the start IP address settings of that router, just increment by 1 on the last one, on the last digit, increment by 1, and then on the end IP address, just set it to 254. Just set it to 254. Don't worry, as this don't worry for conflict, as these IP addresses are local to the IP address to the AP's DHCP server, so they won't conflict with any other APs that you've given IPs in the chain. Okay. Okay, so this is it for the brief explanation, and I'm going to move on to showing you how to configure and also how to access remotely your APs.